Is it something that concerns you of the people making sure that they don't go out of their right mind if something like that happens? Because I know what I'm thinking of could happen if that, for example, they do say Jack Smith says, okay, I'm going to put Donald Trump in jail.
I think it's a very dangerous thing to even talk about, because we do have a tremendously passionate group of voters. And I mean, maybe 100, 150. I've never seen anything like it. Much more passion than they had in 2020 and much more passion than they had in 2016. I think it would be very dangerous.
So you've probably seen at this point sort of like the money quote from that, which is it would be very dangerous if Jack Smith, if the DOJ were to like follow the law or whatever. That would be dangerous. But I don't think that headline really gets across how bad what that tape is in terms of how threatening it is. Donald Trump was like specifically asked about whether we should be afraid of what crazy people might do, which teed him up with an opportunity to tell them not to do anything. And he decided, no, I'm not gonna do that. Instead, I'm just gonna speak positively about people's passion, which was just described to me as a possible prelude to violence. I'm now gonna spin as a good thing. They're more passionate than they were in 2016. They're more passionate than they were in 2020 when they stormed the Capitol and people died. That's all a good thing. It's super dangerous. Let's move on to another topic, I guess. So yes, he did make threats against Jack Smith there, but the threats are so much worse than the headline version of this, I think would lead you to believe. Woz, what do you think?
I honestly think he's kind of bluffing here. I think if he were really trying to use this as a tactic, he'd be telling Jack Smith and those folks behind closed doors, like, look, man, you don't want to do this. People might get hurt. I think he's going public with this as a way to maybe get the message out to people around Jack Smith, right? To be like, hey, man, Trump's going out and saying people are gonna act crazy. You might want to reel this thing back. Or maybe people above Jack Smith's head who Trump hasn't been able to speak to about his case. Maybe he's trying to reach out to them because this seems ridiculous. Like he could get on the phone with Jack Smith and make this exact same threat. The idea that he's going public with it seems like a bluff, and it seems like he's desperate to get the word out there to anybody who might be listening. Please, write on my behalf. Burn the country down when I lose legitimately for the second time in a row.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I'm wondering right now.
But to be sure, he is making those appeals 100%.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's look, he does it in appearances on things like the Simon Conway show, which I've literally never heard of, but I have no doubt that like 20 million conservative Americans would literally storm another Capitol if whoever the hell the people are who host that told them to. It's a weird world we live in. And by the way, Trump is appearing on this weird little show. Anyway, that's not what's important. What I'm curious about is how worried do you think we should be? Because he does this every time there's an update. He says, they're gonna arrest me, someone do something. Or he like directly threatens, for instance, Alvin Bragg, telling people that he's gonna be arrested, that people need to take our nation back. He'll post a photo of him with a baseball bat aimed at Alvin Bragg's head. Anytime there's a big development or there's charges, he does something like this. And I'm not going to say that has not sometimes led to violence. Obviously it has, and sometimes the violence is a little bit more abstract. But in these last couple of cases, it thankfully doesn't seem to have resulted in what he wanted. Like, when he had to turn himself in the last time and get his charges, there was a small group in New York, there was a small group at Mar-a-Lago that organized, but it was not some sort of absolutely massive gathering. They did not, storm DC or anything. So it doesn't mean that it won't happen the next time. And it only takes one crazy person with an arsenal of weapons to do a lot of damage. But like, should we start to feel a little bit less bad about these threats the more times it's demonstrated that although he obviously wants the violence, he can't necessarily get it?
Yeah, I think what ends up happening with Trump supporters is that they do a lot of peacocking. And so they're very loud, the people who really love him, or the people who we might assume would be willing to resort to violence in the case that he lost again fair and square. And I think that's why our antennae are sort of raised every time he says something like this, because in our mind's eye, we can see that deeply disturbed, annoying, but fairly marginal, rabid Trump supporter, right? Like in my head, I think about these Trump supporters being the right-wing equivalent of the ladies that wore the vagina hats at the Women's March. Like, not everybody wore the vagina hats, but but we noticed the people who did. There was a lot of people at the march, but some people were just more boisterous in their, affectation than other people were. And I think Trump supporters make us feel a certain type of way, right? I just don't necessarily think that they have these huge numbers of people that are just gonna go out in droves like we seen, for instance, in 2020 after the George Floyd assassination, right? Like that was a legitimate popular uprising of a bunch of citizens spontaneously, going out to the street en masse and demonstrating for something that they thought just wasn't right. I just don't see a Trump loss again driving that many of his supporters to the streets to do something stupid.
Yeah. Look, I think absent the coup, like I would have a much lower level. Like that is that's the prototypical like mass movement of psychopaths. And there have of course been other incidents of violence. There are people who shoot up Walmarts and send pipe bombs and stuff who very clearly are being specifically motivated by Donald Trump with Cesar Sayoc and all that. And of course there are people who are willing to break into Nancy Pelosi's house and bludgeon her husband's skull in. Yeah, I want us to get through a few more years without anything on the level of a January 6th, and then I'll feel much more comfortable. I will say that I don't know what will come of the most recent threats that we just played for you. In past cases, some of the organizations that track sort of online chatter of threats have seen that there have been an amplification of those sorts of things after Trump posts things like this, including threats of doing like a January 6th times 10 plus guns. One person, very creative, said that they wanted to use dump trucks to drop a few tons of gravel on 6 bridges in hopes of making them unusable to cause a serious hit to food and economic deliveries in and out of New York. Because like, you can't put them on trial if you ain't got food. And I think that that's really creative. I mean, I think first of all, these people definitely have the resources to get all that gravel, and you couldn't easily clear that in an afternoon. And there's no food in New York to subsist on, and no other way to get food to New York than crossing the bridges. So it is a big threat, and I am worried about it. It's very much Bane stuff, and we're without a Batman. Anyway, we're gonna move on to other news. I just wanted to put that out there. Hopefully nothing will come of it, but he certainly hopes that something will.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.